Brought to you by YourQuote, an app that makes you write and perform.
That greets the city on a pleasant Sunday morning. And it dawned a new day in the life of Mr. and Mrs. Patil and the cute dog, Joey. It's 6 o'clock. Mr. Patil leaves with Joey for a walk at the joggers park with his other friends, while Mrs. Patil continues to dream for an extra hour. She wakes up lazily and starts preparing for the Sunday special Kanda Poha for her husband and for herself. While for Joey, she softens the bread with milk. That's the way the boy likes it. When Mr. Patil returns, she takes the milk which he bought on his way home and pours some in the bowl for Joey. She proceeds to make tea for herself and Mr. Patil, and they start watching the news. They have a disagreement on a political matter. Mrs. Patil is upset and is quiet. Mr. Patil gets up from his seat, goes to her and starts feeding from his own hands and starts to say, "Ye meri zora dabi." She smiles and then bursts out laughing. As she turns, he sneaks up a rose and plants in her bun. She giggles like a young girl. After setting the house in order, while her husband is reading the newspaper, she asks him, "What does he feel like having for lunch?" And he absent-mindedly replies, "Kuch bhi chalega." She gives a face palm and then prepares his favorite aloo bhaji with varan bhat. Pouring varan bhat with aloo bhaji on one plate, they start having it together. He adds her favorite mirchi achar for that special taste. As they're eating, Mr. Patil makes sounds to show how delicious it is, just to irritate her. Mrs. Patil gives him a death stare. Mr. Patil laughs and resumes eating. After lunch, the TV is switched on. India is playing a match against Bangladesh. Both of them are ardent fans of cricket, especially of Mahendra Singh Dhoni. It is a T20 match. They sit in the room while watching it, while Joey is sleeping next to them. They often fight for the volume levels. She wants it on the odd number while he wants on the even number. While watching it, Mrs. Patil falls asleep on his shoulder. He gently keeps her head on the pillow, puts a blanket on her, and watches the remaining over on mute. Unfortunately, Mahi doesn't score well, but India wins the match. As the match gets over, he sees it is 3:30 p.m. He decides to steal an extra hour of sleep. He gets under the blanket, moves closer to Mrs. Patil, and puts a hand over her. Mrs. Patil murmurs in sleep and sneaks closer to him. He smiles and goes to sleep. As they wake up in the evening, Mr. Patil is in the kitchen making chai. Mrs. Patil gets up and goes to the balcony where he brings her favorite, the adrak wali chai. Sitting in the jhula in the balcony to sip the chai. The sky is a beautiful shade of orange. It is time for the evening walk. They wear their jackets as it is cold as they leave their home for the walk. While they are walking, they pass by a riverfront. They change their mind. They decide to sit there for a while in the cool breeze. As for dinner, they plan to pack vada pav and misal pav from their favorite stall just near the riverfront. While Mrs. Patil sits on the bench, Mr. Patil is still standing. Mrs. Patil is puzzled. Suddenly, suddenly Mr. Patil goes down on his knees, and in that position, he expresses his love. Happy 55th year of togetherness, love, he greets her. It is the 55th year of togetherness. She again gives a face bow and replies, "Oh uncle, it's not an anniversary today." Mr. Patel takes her palm in his hand and kisses it and tells, "I know, auntie, but sometimes remembering when love happened is not important. Remembering that it happened is more precious." Spending 55 years of togetherness had not changed anything. Only the love had grown more intense. Getting up together, these two oldies walked to their home. Meanwhile, a beautiful message lingers in the air. And love, forever is not a destination. Forever is a journey. Thank you.